Hello again. Ollie here, reporting live from the Dodge I Don't Caravan with a fresh loaf of bread for you. Today's loaf comes to us from the modern day spiritual teacher Eckhart Tolle, and it goes like this. Identification with your mind creates an opaque screen of concepts, labels, images, words, judgments, and definitions that blocks all true relationships. It is this screen of thought that creates the illusion of separateness, the illusion that there is you and a totally separate other. To put it more accurately, it is not so much that you use your mind wrongly. You usually don't use it at all. It uses you. You believe that you are your mind. This is the delusion. The instrument has taken you over. So there's quite a bit to unpack there, but I think that if you've been watching this channel long enough, and if you've been watching my Daily Bread videos, it will all be very, very familiar to you. What Eckhart Tolle is talking about in this passage is the same thing that Alan Watts talks about in so many of his books. The power of symbols. Now, the power is neither good nor bad. What determines their effect on us is our relationship to the symbols. Whether we recognize that a symbol is merely a representation of something that cannot be represented accurately. The opaque screen of thoughts and labels and concepts and opinions and beliefs that Eckhart Tolle is talking about is your perspective. As you go about your daily life, you filter the world through this screen. And in doing so, the actual reality is obscured. You see it through this layer of symbolism and conceptual thinking. And it is this layer, this perspective of ours, that tricks us into thinking we are separate beings, that there is an I and another, that there's this car and the road, that there is this planet and the sun. It's all one. That's the essential revelation of all mystical experiences. It's the messaging behind all of the great traditions of history. It's all one. But this big sexy brain of ours and the mind which accompanies it has tricked us into thinking that the labels we apply to things are real. We've become so enamored with our tricks and our cleverness that we've forgotten the true purpose of these things. So when we go through the world and we don't acknowledge or even realize that we're filtering everything through this very subjective and largely inaccurate filter, then we can be certain that the mind is using us and not the other way around. Which is why I really like this passage. Eckhart Tolle doesn't mince his words. He tells us straight up. It's not that we don't use the mind correctly. It's that we don't use the mind at all. The mind, as I have said before, has a mind of its own, a life of its own, especially if we leave it to its own devices. When we become present, when we become self-aware, when we realize that the opaque screen is there in front of our face all the time, we can start to work on taking it apart and peeking around it at the unfiltered reality which is life. Anywho, that's enough metaphysical, philosophical speculation for one drive home. Hope you enjoyed it, and don't forget to live well, my friends.